But the smell came before the trucks did. It always did. By the time Elara stepped onto the back porch that summer morning, the air over the south pasture already carried that thick fermented sweetness, half molasses and half rot, the kind of smell that settles into your clothes and refuses to leave. Beyond the fence, a fresh black mountain of crushed cane and mill sludge steamed quietly in the early heat, slowly swallowing her family's legacy. If you have ever watched something you love get pushed aside while the rest of the world looked away, stay with this story, because what the factory owners didn't know was that this toxic mountain was actually the greatest agricultural gold mine in the valley. Elara's family farm was 80 acres of soft loam that had once grown sweet corn so tall you couldn't see the tractor through the stalks. But that was before the sugar refinery expanded its operations and turned their property into a dumping ground. Her father spent his final years writing desperate letters to corporate headquarters, receiving nothing but polite, bureaucratic dismissals, leaving Elara with a heartbreaking stalemate and a farm on the brink of ruin. Armed with a degree in biochemistry, Elara stopped looking at the grey dump site as an eyesore and began analysing it through a microscope, discovering that beneath the suffocating pH of 4.5 and the brutal carbon to nitrogen ratio, the waste was actually packed with phosphorus, potassium, and calcium. Behind the old equipment shed, out of view of the road, she began her secret experiment by moving 20 tons of the cane waste into long, precise rows, mixing it with free cow manure from a local dairy farm to balance the carbon, and dusting it with agricultural lime to neutralize the acid. For the biological catalyst, she gathered rich leaf mold from the nearby old-growth forest, brewing a highly active microbial tea packed with native fungi uniquely adapted to the local climate. She drenched the rows until they felt like a wrung-out sponge, and though the piles stayed cold and lifeless for a week, by the 9th day, a thin wisp of steam rose from the center as the internal temperature surged to a blistering 65 degrees Celsius. The winter brought brutal challenges, with sudden frosts freezing the outer layers and heavy rains turning the core sour, forcing Elara to turn the heavy, steaming mass manually with a pitchfork until her hands cracked and bled through her work gloves. By early spring, the foul smell completely vanished, and the pale industrial sludge transformed into a rich, crumbly, charcoal-black humus that smelled exactly like a deep forest floor after rain. She applied her homemade biofertilizer to a barren test plot and planted sweet corn, and by midsummer, the treated plot was a towering, lush sea of deep jade green that retained water for days, while the control plot remained dry and struggling. The silence of the valley was broken only by the rhythmic thumping of the refinery's heavy machinery, a constant reminder of the shadow that hung over the entire community. Elara remembered when the air used to smell like wild jasmine and fresh earth before the industrial expansion choked the horizon with grey smoke and chemical vapors. She spent hours walking through the dying sections of her farm, watching the leaves of her family's old orchard turn yellow and drop prematurely, victims of the acidic groundwater that spread silently beneath the soil. Every morning, before the sun crested the hills, she would sit at the kitchen table, surrounded by old land deeds and chemical textbooks, searching for a flaw in the factory's defense, a single piece of data that could force them to stop. Her mother would quietly place a cup of tea beside her, saying nothing but offering a steady comfort that kept Elara from giving up entirely in the darkest moments. The legal system had failed them. The local council turned a blind eye because the refinery paid the majority of the town's taxes, and the neighbors were too afraid of losing their jobs to speak out. Elara realized that the only power she possessed was the knowledge she had gathered during her university years, and she vowed to use it like a lever to move the massive weight of corporate indifference. As the summer progressed, the mountains of cane waste grew so tall they blocked the view of the western sunset from the porch, casting a literal and metaphorical shadow over the farmhouse. Elara's father's health continued to decline, his lungs damaged by years of inhaling the sour, fermenting dust that blew off the piles during the dry season, adding a desperate urgency to her research. She began collecting data on the wind patterns, mapping how the toxic dust traveled across the valley, affecting not just her farm but 3 other neighboring properties whose owners were too tired to fight. Her small shed laboratory became her sanctuary, filled with glass beakers, pH strips, and jars of soil samples labeled by date and near location, creating a detailed physical timeline of the land's destruction. She spent nights studying the metabolic pathways of specialized bacteria, looking for strains that could survive in high acidity and break down complex industrial polymers without creating harmful secondary byproducts. The breakthrough came when she realized that the forest soil contained a rare strain of actinomycetes that actually thrived on the specific sugars left over in the refinery's filter cake. The extraction process was slow and tedious, requiring Elara to hike into the deepest parts of the old forest with a trowel and sterile bags, looking for the telltale white, thread-like webs of mycelium beneath the ancient oak trees. She would bring these samples back, carefully culturing them on agar plates she made herself from seaweed extract, watching the microscopic colonies grow and multiply under her watchful eye. She experimented with different food sources for the microbes, finding that a precise mixture of local honey and rainwater gave them the maximum energy boost before they were introduced to the harsh environment of the waste piles. Her hands became stained with the dark juices of the forest soil, and her clothes carried the scent of deep earth, a stark contrast to the chemical stench that ruled the rest of the property. Her father, watching from the kitchen window, began to see a change in her posture, the heavy slump of defeat replaced by the sharp, focused movements of a woman on a mission. He didn't understand the science, but he understood determination, and he began helping her by cleaning the old glass jars and organizing her sample shelves. When the time came to build the first full-scale testing windrow, Elara knew she couldn't afford to make a single mistake, as her remaining savings were barely enough to cover the cost of renting the tractor for a weekend. She spent 2 days measuring the dimensions of the pile, ensuring it was oriented correctly to catch the prevailing wind for natural aeration while remaining protected from sudden cloudbursts. The physical labor was exhausting. She shifted tons of dense, wet material by hand when the tractor couldn't reach the tight corners near the fence line, her muscles burning with a fierce intensity. The dairy farmer down the road, an old friend of her grandfather named Thomas, watched her from his truck, eventually climbing down to help her haul the heavy bags of agricultural lime without asking for a penny in return. "Your grandfather wouldn't let this land die without a fight, and neither should you," Thomas said, his gruff voice cracking with emotion as they worked side by side in the dust. With the lime mixed in and the CN ratio balanced, Elara poured the bubbling microbial tea over the mountain of waste, watching it disappear into the porous structure like water into a desert. The initial waiting period was a psychological torture, as day after day the thermometer read no change, and the pile remained a cold, silent monument to her potential failure. She began to doubt her calculations, staying up until dawn recalculating the moisture percentages and the exact ratios of nitrogen to carbon, terrified that she had accidentally created an anaerobic dead zone. On the 8th night, a sudden thunderstorm rolled through the valley, threatening to wash away her carefully constructed windrows and ruin months of preparation. Elara ran out into the pouring rain with old tarps and heavy stones, working in the dark to secure the covers while the lightning flashed overhead, illuminating the massive grey refinery in the distance like a hostile fortress. She returned to the house soaked and shivering, weeping from exhaustion and fear that the rain had drowned her microscopic army before they could even begin their work. But the next morning, as the sun broke through the clouds, she walked out to the piles and saw a sight that made her heart stop, a thick, steady plume of white steam rising from the top of the center windrow. She rushed forward with the long thermometer, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped it, and plunged the steel probe deep into the heart of the steaming organic mass. The dial began to spin immediately, passing 40, then 50, and finally stabilizing at exactly 65 degrees Celsius, indicating that the thermophilic bacteria had taken over and were consuming the waste at a furious pace. The internal heat was so intense that it created its own microclimate, drawing in fresh oxygen from the sides and expelling purified water vapor from the top, a perfect living engine of regeneration. Elara called her father out to see it, and together they stood in the morning air, watching the steam rise, a physical manifestation of hope in a place that had known only despair for a decade. Over the next month, she followed a strict schedule, turning the piles every 72 hours to ensure the outer edges were brought into the hot core, killing any lingering pathogens and ensuring uniform decomposition. The physical strain was immense, but the visible transformation of the material kept her moving, as the bright grey sludge began to darken into a rich, deep chocolate brown. By the time the early spring came, the transformation was complete, and the once barren acre of land was ready for the ultimate test that would determine the future of her family's farm. She split her test plot into 2 equal halves, using standard chemical fertilizers on the left side and her newly created microbe-rich organic humus on the right side. She chose sweet corn because it was notorious for stripping nutrients from the soil, meaning any difference in the two plots would be immediately obvious within a few weeks of growth. As the seeds germinated, Elara spent her afternoons counting the green shoots, noting that the organic plot showed a 95% germination rate compared to only 70% on the chemically treated side. The plants in the organic plot grew with a ferocious vitality, their leaves broader and deeper green, their stems thick and resilient against the strong spring winds that swept through the open valley. The soil itself changed texture, becoming soft and spongy, retaining water so efficiently that Elara only needed to irrigate it half as often as the rest of the farm. The success of the test plot could not be hidden from the rest of the town, and soon, passing farmers began slowing their trucks down to stare at the wall of vibrant green corn rising along the road. Thomas, the dairy farmer, brought his friends over to examine the soil, marveling at how a piece of land that had been declared dead by agricultural experts was now producing the finest crop in the county. "It's like magic," one old farmer muttered, digging his fingers into the dark, crumbly humus and smelling the rich, clean aroma that rose from the ground. "It's not magic, it's biology," Elara replied, her voice filled with a quiet pride that had been missing for years, as she handed him a soil report showing the massive increase in microbial activity. She knew that this was only the first step, and that to truly save her valley, she needed to bring her findings directly to the source of the pollution and force them to make a choice. She spent a week preparing her presentation for the refinery executives, knowing that they would dismiss any emotional appeals about her family's history or her father's failing health. She focused purely on the economics, using her data to show that by using her method, the refinery could save millions of dollars in environmental fines and waste disposal costs while creating a valuable secondary product. On the day of the meeting, she dressed in her finest clothes, her hands still showing the rough scars of her labor, and walked into the glass-walled boardroom where the destiny of her valley was decided. The chief operations officer, a cold man who had ignored her father's letters for years, looked at her with a patronizing smile, expecting a young girl with a list of grievances. Instead, Elara opened her laptop and delivered a flawless, technical breakdown of their own waste stream, demonstrating how their negligence was costing them money and how her solution could fix it. She placed the two glass jars on the polished mahogany table, one containing the grey, acidic sludge that ruined her fences, and the other filled with the dark, sweet-smelling fertilizer that grew the tallest corn in the county. The room went silent as the environmental compliance team examined her soil analysis reports, unable to find a single flaw in her methodology or her chemical equations. "You can continue to pay fines and fight the community in court, or you can hand over your wasteland to me, provide the machinery, and let me turn your biggest liability into a profitable asset," Elara said, looking the operations officer directly in the eye. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity before the officer leaned forward, picked up the jar of finished humus, opened it, and took a deep breath of the rich, earthy scent. He looked at his compliance team, saw them nodding in agreement, and turned back to Elara with a look of genuine respect on his face. The agreement they signed that afternoon changed the landscape of the valley forever, transitioning the refinery from a source of destruction into a partner in ecological restoration. The unmanaged grey mountains behind Elara's house were systematically moved into a newly constructed, state-of-the-art industrial composting facility managed entirely under her direction. She hired 3 local workers who had lost their farms to the pollution, teaching them the science of microbial management and the importance of precise aeration schedules. The refinery provided heavy loaders and automated turning equipment, allowing Elara to scale her operation from 20 tons to thousands of tons per season, supplying the entire valley with cheap, sustainable fertilizer. Her family farm was fully restored, the bottom land producing yields that exceeded her grandfather's wildest stories, its soil dark, deep, and vibrant with life. On quiet summer evenings, Elara would stand on the back porch with her father, looking out over the endless fields of green, the air no longer carrying the scent of rot, but the clean, sweet promise of a land that had been redeemed through patience, intelligence, and love.